Good evening, folks. This is Ben Vandenbos with the Sawtooth Avalanche Center with your weekend update for February 5th, 2021. We're starting again this week with a pretty photo because, as you probably know by now, our snowpack is anything but pretty. In this photo, we're looking at the Boulder Mountains. It's Boulder Peak on the right, and then looking off towards Silver Peak, Lorenzo, and Easley on the far left. If you've been paying attention, you know that it's been a pretty exciting couple of weeks for us around here. The tail end of last week, we had a really intense storm cycle that brought quite a bit of snow, particularly to our southern areas. Baldy recorded over 4 feet of snow in less than 3 days, and that left us with a bit more complex of a snowpack than we've been dealing with for the most part. I'm going to run over a few different things that we've been seeing. Starting with that increasing snowpack complexity. We saw a number of human-triggered avalanches. In the middle of the week, we saw large avalanches without very much new snow. And then we also saw some repeat offenders, avalanches running in paths that had already run once before. As far as increasing complexity goes, for most of the season, we've been dealing with one week layer of snow. We buried that in the second week of December. And for the last almost 2 months, that's caused avalanches and caused a major headache for us. Although this was a pretty ugly snowpack, it was a simple one. Unfortunately, during this week and right at the tail end of last week, we buried a couple of more weak layers, and we went from having a simple yet ugly snowpack to a complex and ugly snowpack. You can see on the top right there, that image shows some depth hoar. That's that weak snow buried near the ground we've been talking about all year. And in the bottom right, you can see a nice crystal of surface hoar, which is one of the new weak layers we've been dealing with. That storm that started on the 27th buried a lot of surface hoar, particularly on shaded aspects, and those that are a little bit more sheltered from the wind, and on solar aspects that buried a layer of crusts and facets. And both of those layers, the surface hoar and those facets, have been reactive in our snowpack tests and then have been producing avalanches for the last week. To give you another sense of what that looks like, here we are looking at 2 snowpacks before the big storm about a week ago. That started on the 27th of January. What you can see near the bottom of both of these snowpacks is a layer of weak snow, those December facets that we buried on the 11th. And when these photos were taken, the surface here is a layer of surface hoar in both of these images. And that's one of the main weak layers that we've got now in the middle portion of our snowpack. That's buried about 1 to 3 feet deep, depending on where you are. And it's produced quite a few avalanches already. And it looks like it will continue to at least for the near future. As far as human-triggered avalanches goes, this one occurred right at the tail end of last week. This is just outside the boundary area of Baldy there. And on the upper left, you can see a ski track that enters this steeper slope here. This is a west-facing slope at 6,200 feet. Collapsed this entire slope, and just below them, this avalanche released on that weak snow near the ground, it appears, ran down and hit some houses at the bottom and buried a vehicle. This is also near Baldy. This is in the out of bounds on the north side in the burn there. It's unclear if this is a Skewertriggered avalanche or not, but you can see some closely associated ski tracks here, avoiding that debris. This is a large avalanche that ran well over 1,000 feet. It's a north-facing slope at 7,200 feet where this photo is taken. As we head up north, this is on Copper Mountain at 8,400 feet. This is an avalanche that appeared to have been remotely triggered from the ridgetop. It failed on buried surface hoar, so that layer that we're calling the January 27th layer now, based on when it was buried. This has produced unstable snowpack tests in a number of places, basically ranging from the Wood River Valley all the way up north into our Banner Summit zone, and is something that we're keeping our eyes on for the foreseeable future. On shaded aspects, that surface hoar doesn't get cooked down by the sun, so when it's building during those calm, clear nights, it has a chance to be preserved instead of being kind of melted away or falling over in the sun. Also, on more windy slopes, the surface hoar can often get knocked down, so you don't have good kind of tall standing feathers of surface hoar that tend to be significantly more unstable. But even on those solar aspects, those ones that face the sun a little bit more, we've been finding crusts and facets that have been producing natural avalanches and unstable snowpack test scores. And one final human triggered avalanche. This is looking down at a slide that I remotely triggered just a couple of days ago in the Pioneer Mountains. This is a northeast facing slope at 9,000 feet. If you want to see a video of this, there's one on our Facebook page and our Instagram page. I triggered this avalanche from the ridge line above, just walking along on the ridge. I felt the slope collapse and looked down to see this large avalanche rip down through the forest below, breaking a number of trees as it went. And as it descended its path, it actually sympathetically triggered avalanches up to about a half a mile away, maybe 3 or 4 different pockets, all of which were large enough to bury a person. In addition to these natural avalanches that these human triggered avalanches we've been seeing, we also had a pretty interesting event about in the middle of the week, Tuesday into Wednesday of this week, when it snowed just 3 to 5 inches down here in our southern zones with some wind, and it produced this round of natural activity, pretty impressive natural activity. The crown in the center of this photo is over a 1/4 mile wide. The crown off to the left is hundreds and hundreds of feet wide. And then there's a crown in the background there that's also over a 1/4 of a mile wide. Keep in mind, these avalanches failed with just a few inches of new snow and wind. Clear indications that our snowpack is weak and is not very good at trying to hold up to the load that we've been putting on it. In addition to these human triggered and natural avalanches, we've also seen some repeat offending avalanches. This is when an avalanche fails once and then the bed surface that is exposed after that avalanche runs down the slope. And we reload that with wind or with snow, and it produces another avalanche. That photo on the left there was taken January 13th, and the one on the right was taken January 31st. And if you look closely in the upper, kind of the center portion of that photo on the right, you can see some of the ghost crown that mimics the crown line over here, where it's just that same crown line preserved. And then those crowns down lower, those avalanches failed on that bed surface. So what this is telling us is that even these slopes that have avalanched once, we're not really getting rid of the weak layer when we're seeing those avalanches, unfortunately. And as we reload those bed surfaces, we have the possibility for generating more avalanches on those. This is from the Cabin Creek in the south end of the Sawtooth. That's a east-facing slope at 9,800 feet. Looking forward from here. So it's Friday night when I'm recording this. We've got a weak storm heading into our forecast area, maybe Saturday night into Sunday. It's not going to bring a lot of snow, a couple inches up north maybe, and just a trace down south here, but it is going to bring a bunch of wind. There's still quite a bit of snow available for transport. So when that wind picks up, we're expecting to see an increase in the likelihood of triggered avalanches and maybe even some more natural avalanches like we saw before. And, we need to, as you're traveling around, it's important to bear in mind the snowpack that's underneath your feet. Further south, we've got a thinner and weaker snowpack that really is struggling to bear the load of these loading events that we've been putting on it, and even small wind events and small snow events. Further north, we've got a much deeper snowpack, but you're dealing with, because of that, you're dealing with a deep snowpack with weak snow at the ground, which is kind of more of a deep slab problem where you can trigger avalanches. It's much harder to do so, but avalanches that you trigger are going to be unlikely for you to survive. So yeah, that's kind of the picture you got for the weekend. Reminder that this is not a replacement for the forecast. This is just a supplement for the forecast, something to give you a little bit of context when you're reading the forecast. We strongly encourage you to check the advisory, check the forecast every morning before you head out into the mountains. There's good information in there, regardless of your skill or ability level, and there's also a great weather forecast in there that helps you figure out where you're going to go and what you're going to see for the day. Another reminder: if you're seeing avalanches out there, if you're seeing anything remotely interesting, even something as simple as how much new snow fell or how windy it was, send us an observation. We've got a lot of great options for how to do that. You can text us observations, email us. You can submit them through that nice observation form we have on our website, and Yeah, share what you're seeing. It helps us to create a more accurate forecast and to keep everybody informed and safe. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.